Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Pointless Top 10, a show where we make top 10 lists of pointless things, where we fly and buy pointless statue in Booty Bay, because inside pointless things are treasure. Let's begin. 10. Number 10 are the Sarok tents, and the Sarok tents are located on the Isle of Thunder. And if you don't know who the Sarok are, they are a race of lizard men created by the Mogu from the fauna of the Vale of Eternal Blossoms. And so these lizard creatures have created these lizard-esque types of tents. And I just think these tents are really cool. I was actually going to put these in Pointless Top 10 huts, but then I realized that they're not really huts, they're more of tents, which we'll get into that eventually, right? The intricacies and definitions of what makes a tent versus a hut versus all that type of stuff. And I was trying to figure out what these tents are actually made out of. Like at first I was like, are they just making these tents out of their own people? You know what I mean? Like it kind of looked like lizardy types of skin. So I was like, are they having their, maybe their friends and family members or tribal members die, and then they're like, we'll make a tent out of your skin to honor you or something. But I was like, that wouldn't really make sense because these are like massive tents, and I doubt one small Sarok is going to be able to make this giant tent. But I don't know, maybe their skin stretches out really well, but that doesn't really make sense. And then I saw the big dinosaurs walking around, and I was like, oh, it's clearly just dinosaur skin, which is still pretty insane. Like they're killing these giant dinosaurs and making tents out of them. Like that's pretty metal. So either way, that's why the Sarok tents on the Isle of Thunder are number 10. 9. Number 9 is the Volparen Racial Tent, and the Volparen Racial Tent is a tent that you create when you make a camp for your Volparen, and then you're able to return to that camp at any point when you're not on a cooldown. And I wanted to put this on the list for a few reasons. Number one is, it's a tent. It's a very basic tent. It's got some sticks. It's got some cloth. It's got a cool campfire outside. You got a little backpack and stuff. Like it's very basic. And sometimes the most basic, simplistic things are worth appreciating. But if this was just a normal tent without anything tied to it, I probably wouldn't put it on the list. My favorite part about this is what the actual Volparen Racial is. And that is the ability to just make a campsite anywhere in the world and then be able to go there whenever you feel like it. Like to me, that is the best racial in World of Warcraft. I don't care what anybody says. It was perfect for mount farming, especially when you'd have to like go farm a specific dungeon or whatever it might be, your raid, and you could just set up your camp right outside, and then you'd be like, oh, time to go farm that, and then boom, you just go right there. Like this is easily my favorite racial in World of Warcraft, even though I'm coming at it from like a mount farming roleplay perspective, not a really like metagame PvP, PvE perspective, right? But, to each their own. And so that's why the Volparen tent is number 9. 8. Number 8 are the Centaur tents, primarily located in the Barrens. They also have some in Desolus and wherever you would find Centaur, but I specifically always remember the Barrens ones, probably because they were the first ones you would run into when you were leveling a Horde character. And they actually have a wide variety of tents. They have small tents, they have medium-sized tents, they've got big tents, like they've got some pretty cool tents. And, even though they are very old, like these are definitely 2004 World of Warcraft tents, like I think they still hold up pretty well. Quite literally. I mean, they've been standing for like 20 years or whatever, right? Oh, what a great joke. Sorry. But yeah, I think I appreciate these tents more out of nostalgia than anything because there's nothing too crazy about them, but I'll always remember these tents. And when I think of World of Warcraft tents, these are some of the first tents that come to mind. Like I said, I think just because I remember questing in the Barrens so much, and I've probably been here hundreds of times, and so they just always pop into my head, and that's why the Centaur tents are number 8. 7. Number 7 are the Tauren tents, and I wanted to put these on the list because this is where I really wanted to get into what defines a tent. So the Tauren tents are based off of the Native American tents called teepees, and these were specifically cone-shaped dwellings traditionally used by indigenous people of the Great Plains. Teepees were traditionally described as a lodge or a tent, and all of them are pretty much made out of animal skins stretched across wooden poles used for shelter. And so when I looked more into it, it appears that a tent is pretty much designed to be portable and collapsible. And so when I was looking at all of these, I was like, I guess a lot of these could be portable and collapsible, right? Like there's certain structures where you're like, I don't know how portable that would be, or maybe certain parts of it would be portable, but not other parts. In fact, I was trying to decide between the Tauren and the High Mountain Tauren for whose buildings I want to use for tents, but it felt like the actual Tauren buildings were more portable and tent-like, while the High Mountain Tauren felt a bit more like permanent structures. But no matter the case, I love the Tauren fabrics with all the different markings and paintings on them, and then all of the cool materials that they use, and I just think they're really cool. And out of all the lists that I could put them in, I think this is the most fitting for them. So that's why the Tauren tents, or teepees, are number 7. 6. Number 6 are the tents at the Argent Tournament. And I mean, how could we all forget about the Argent Tournament, one of everyone's favorite events in World of Warcraft history? However, whether you like the Argent Tournament or not, I think the actual tents and the tent buildings they have here are really cool. Like, they have, you know, some basic tents all around. They're kind of just your standard tents. Some of the tents are like reused from Brewfest or Dark Moon Fair and stuff like that. But then there's actually these massive tent structures, like these tent buildings. They're almost like circus tents, right? And while I was researching, I learned that the Argent Tournament was originally supposed to reside in the Crystal Song Forest, but these plans were changed because it would have been too close to Dalaran, which ended up being a greater resource hog than Blizzard anticipated. And you know, I will say, going back and kind of looking through the Argent Tournament grounds and going into these big tent structures and all this stuff, I actually was kind of nostalgic for the Argent Tournament. Although then I saw the jousting and I was quickly reminded of how terrible the jousting stuff was. So everything else is pretty cool here, and especially the tents. And so that's why the Argent Tournament tents are number 6. 5. Number 5 are the Knoll Tents, and the Knoll Tents are located in Elwyn Forest, as well as places like Feralus, Westfall, and pretty much anywhere you can find gnolls. And I've talked about Knoll Tents before back in Pointless Top 10 hidden faces in World of Warcraft, because there are human faces stitched into the Knoll Tents. And if you go on the internet and search up like hidden things in World of Warcraft, this is probably one of the most searched things you'll find. It is just people being like, did you know that in the Knoll Tents there's faces? Like, at this point, I don't know who doesn't know that there's Knoll Tents and faces. However, or wait, I just said they're putting Knoll Tents in faces. I guess you know what? The Gnolls have invented a way to put Knoll Tents in faces. We're doomed. But anyway, I think that does make them very unique tents, right? Like, people talk about them for a reason, because it's kind of creepy, it's weird, but I mean, when you think about it, it's not that creepy to the Gnolls. They're just doing what humans do, right? Humans make, you know, tents and shelters and stuff out of animal skins. The Gnolls are just like, we'll just make tents out of human skin, right? But either way, that's why I had to put the Knoll Tents on this list. And so that's why the Knoll Tents are number 5. 4. Number 4 are the tents at the Dark Moon Fair. And I had to put the Dark Moon Fair tents on this list because, I mean, the Dark Moon Fair is pretty much comprised of tents. Almost every single building at the Dark Moon Fair is a tent. In fact, I think pretty much everything at the Dark Moon Fair can be taken down, because that's just the way carnivals work, right? I guess the hardest thing to take down would be the roller coaster, but I mean, listen, we're on Dark Moon Island. I doubt they're going anywhere at this point. I'm sure if they really had to, they could take down the roller coaster, but that's besides the point. The actual tents at the Dark Moon Fair are made up of green and purple fabric stitched together with this like yellowish brown rope, and it's pretty much every single tent has that type of aesthetic. There are some tents and the walls that are stitched together with purple and white fabric, so I guess, you know, they mix it up here and there, and then some of the really big tents have this yellow fabric, so they do have some variety, but I just felt like I had to put the Dark Moon Fair on the list. They have so many tents, so many varieties of tents, and I mean, they've had tents going all the way back to the start of World of Warcraft in like 2004, so that's why the Dark Moon Fair tents are number 4. 3. Number 3 are the Dragon Scale Expedition tents located in the Waking Shores. And there's actually 2 tents here that I wanted to show off. So the first one is this big white cream-colored tent that has Pepe up top guarding it in his little adventure outfit, and it's held up with these big wooden logs, and there's a bunch of rope and this fabric that you roll up, and it almost looks like when you roll up the fabric, it's like a sleeping bag or almost like a rolled up map, which I think really does give that adventure vibe. And then outside of that, there's actually a smaller version that's like a small tent with seemingly the same materials, but just, you know, a much smaller tent. And then we have these red Blood Elf tents that have big kind of golden red tapestries, and, well, I don't actually know if they're Blood Elf tents, but they just feel very Blood Elf coded, you know what I mean? They have like a bunch of golden embroidery all over the place, and it very much feels like a Blood Elf tent. And to me, these are the tents that feel like they want to go camping in style, right? Like, they're not just going out for functionality. They're like, yo, we're going camping, but like, we're gonna look good doing it. And so yeah, all these tents are located at the same area, all under the Dragon Scale Expedition. So I was like, hey, you know what? Let's just put all of them on the list. And so that's why all of the Dragon Scale Expedition tents are number 3. 2. Number 2 are the Forsaken tents, and there's quite a few Forsaken tents, especially in post-destroyed Undercity. So I saw this online and I was like, dude, where is this tent? And I flew all over the place looking for this tent and I couldn't find it. And then I realized you had to go to the destroyed Undercity area, Brill, where Brill has been, you know, decimated, and then they just have a bunch of tents set up. But some of these tents are so cool. Like this big tent is being held up with these chains, and there's really cool skulls and iron things all over the place, and the really cool purple fabric, drapery, whatever you want to call it. I just realized how bad I am at describing stuff. I'm just like, there's like iron and purple things. Luckily, I have the visuals for you to look at, so you know what I'm talking about. But if I had to describe this like normally, people would be like, what are you saying? But yeah, this is a really cool tent. It has the purple lanterns as well, which I like. And then there's also some smaller tents. There's like a smaller version, I think, of this tent. And then there's some weird looking tents. There's like half tents. And then there's like these umbrella tents. I don't even know who designed these, but you know, I guess they work, right? They've got like weird like whoop whoop, which is, honestly, it's pretty good for repelling water and stuff, I guess. But either way, the Forsaken tents are really cool, especially the big main tent that I talked about first. So that's why the Forsaken tents are number 2. And number 1 are the Sethrak tents, and the Sethrak tents are located in Vol'dun, where the Sethrak are. And part of this might just be my bias of how much I like the Sethrak and want them to be a playable race, but I think they have some really cool tents. Like, this tent right here is probably my favorite tent. It's got all the different fabrics and stuff, but it has a Krallisk on the roof. So they've literally taken one of the Krallisk heads, which they ride around on as mounts and I guess used for various other things, and they put it on the tent as a roof, and it just looks really cool. They even painted the head with the same markings that are on the fabric. Then they have some other tents which are more basic tents or just like generic tent structures, but then I saw this really cool big blanket tent, and I have never seen anything like this in World of Warcraft. I think it's so cool. In fact, you know what? I think I lied. This may have been my favorite tent. So if you look at it, it almost looks like it's made out of snake skin or snake scales, and when you get close up, I mean, it might actually be, but it looks like they've just taken various pieces of fabric and like stitched them together to look like snake skin or snake scales. In fact, it almost looks like it is a snake opening its mouth to swallow you. Like, it's fantastic. And so this plus all of the other Sethrak tents made me want to put them at number 1, and that's why the Sethrak tents are number 1. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this episode of Pointless Top 10. If you want more top 10s, you can check out huts, since I talked about that quite a few times in this video, or you can go check out the weirdest buildings in World of Warcraft. Also, like, comment, subscribe, and consider supporting the channel over on patreon.com/Crendor or by becoming a channel member. Okay? Okay. See ya.